Hello again, everyone. This is Michael Breyer, and I am the real Messiah. When I was a little boy of perhaps 3 or 4 years old, I watched an episode of The 700 Club. It was a Christian televangelist show that made fundraising appeals. Later that night, I was playing in the dark with a flashlight in the kitchen. There were some dirty dishes in the sink. The food particles might have come from kosher food, but for the most part, they would be considered inedible. They also contained an amount of my saliva, sufficient to have living cells in it, such as that from tissues from inside of my mouth. I also saw a roach motel that was left by another person to trap cockroaches. It had trapped a pregnant mother roach. It had laid an egg sac. Both it and its egg sac were trapped on the glue strip. This was the birth of the Chabad Lubavitch 770 movement. The baby roaches emerged from their egg sac and attempted to reach freedom. At that age, they were white in color. One of the glue strips was not exposed, so a baby roach managed to climb over it to safety. I wept tears of joy at the miracle of its survival. I did not interfere because I felt I had no moral obligation to end its life, even though it's a pest. I was aware that it was my responsibility as the Messiah to love for God. It was the reason he brought me into existence, but it is very detrimental to me. I satisfied the criteria minimally by celebrating in my heart the victory of that tiny insect. Until this day, my hometown still abounds with fireflies in the summertime to commemorate the event. It is around the time of my birthday and around the time of Tisha B'Av, which in Judaism is called the birthday of the Messiah. It is also around the time of the zodiacal time of the crab. That roach lived on to feed and breed. Eventually, it reincarnated as the lobster, still an arthropod, but one that lives in the water. Since water is likened to Torah in Judaism, that meant it ascended in spiritual capability even though it is a bottom feeder. It also shares an environment with fish, which are likened to tzaddikim and are the only animals fit to eat, and therefore the tzaddikim are the only ones considered fit to learn Torah. It also grew in size and developed pincers capable of harming even a human being. Its body went from dark brown to a rich brick red in color. When I was a boy of less than 5 years old, I had a conversation with my late grandmother, Mrs. Henrietta Freeman. We were looking at old family pictures together. I saw my grandmother in a picture next to a woman I did not know. I asked her who it was. She said, "That's your grandmother." I said to her, "But Grandma, I thought you're my grandmother." She replied, "No, I mean your real grandmother, the one you were given when you were born, before they went and changed everything. They must have forgotten to take this picture out. Her name was Shaneville. That's Grandma Jenny." I didn't understand whether she was alive or dead, so I asked her, would it be possible for me to meet her? She said to me with a sly grin, "I think that can be arranged." A short time later, I met a little girl in the neighborhood. She had gray hair like an old lady. We became friends. She was over my house almost every day. We attended the same public elementary school together. When the movie Fame came out, there was a sudden vogue for all the children to become big stars in the performing arts. Worst afflicted of them all was my friend Jennifer. She had become like a sister to me, and I cared about her. I did not want to see her make a mistake and ruin her life. So I sat down with her and had a heart-to-heart talk with her about the meaning of life. I told her that in my opinion, I felt it would be best for everyone to be satisfied with just being an ordinary person. I encouraged her to change course. Jennifer was not a patient person. The conversation was not lengthy, but it took a while because I felt it was important. I reckon we spoke for about 20 minutes, although it was mostly me doing the talking, so it was more like a lecture. Forever after, she would speak of it as a 5-hour lecture. It is for this reason that the Tanya has 5 books. The whole idea came from me. She plagiarized the material in its entirety. I am the real author of the Tanya. Jennifer is both Schneer Zalman Miliadi and Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Please refer to my lesson on simultaneous existence. It is lesson number 1 for a reason. She did the exact opposite of what I told her. She took the contents of my lecture, made it into a book, perhaps added some material of her own, and published it all over the world, but the basic premise is mine. As a result of this maneuver, Chabad Lubavitch 770 is the most popular, successful, and influential group in the Jewish world today. It is also the most accessible. They are not entirely kosher because they are not purely Jewish. They are Erev Rav. That's the mixed multitude described in the Exodus. They are descendants of Negro slaves that toiled alongside the Israelites in Egypt. They only fled for their lives together with the Israelites so as to escape their bondage. Their oppressors were fellow Egyptians. They were also black and consanguines. Egypt was like an empire, and it contained several Egyptian nationalities. They enslaved their own people. They are not descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our three patriarchs, but they did undergo a nationwide conversion at the foot of Mount Sinai. It was overseen by God himself. That means they accepted the yoke of Torah upon themselves, but they did not do so willingly because it was a foreign ideology to them. They appear mostly Caucasian today. It is reasonable to assume they intermarried with us, but it is also possible they use Egyptian witchcraft to disguise themselves. They might have learned it from the sorcerers of Khartoum. The name of ancient Egypt in their own language is Chemet. It is linguistically similar or cognate to the acronym Chabad, which is a synonym for Lubavitscher. The name Lubavitcher is cognate to the word lobster, for that is what they really are. The lobster, in turn, is essentially just an evolved cockroach that is aquatic. The title Lubavitcher Rebbe is just a sound alike for red lobster. The Lubavitcher Rebbe grew his fingernails long and rough and never told anyone the reason. It is because every time an animal evolves or reincarnates as a human, they are required by heavenly law to display a siman heker, or recognizable sign indicating their species. Moreover, this sign is forcibly placed upon them by heaven, not unlike the mark of Cain. The Lubavitcher Rebbe had more than one, but among them were fingernails that resembled a lobster's claws. To the best of my knowledge, no shellfish is meant to be consumed by a human being at all, whether Jew or Gentile. It is edible, but not considered a foodstuff. In other words, it is unnatural to eat them. It could have unpredictable effects on the body and mind, and it could also affect others. His followers regard him as the Messiah today. They have miniature parades in his honor. They fly a yellow Messiah flag. They march around the streets, waving flags, brightly colored yellow, with the Hebrew word Mashiach, meaning Messiah, printed in red letters under a blue crown. It is a heresy. It is the heresy of a false Messiah. They also have lapel pins, bumper stickers, t-shirts, and other paraphernalia to advertising their heresy. They do so openly and brazenly because no one dares to oppose them. They are numerous and largely perceived as mainstream. There are also Lubavitchers that believe Schneerson is God. They are called the Elohists. They refer to him as their Bor'enu, which means creator.